we're looking at the Royal Purple oil filter. This is really a continuation from another film in which we take Royal Purple, AmSoil, K&N, Wix XP, and Fram Pro Synthetic, and we compare all 5 filters regarding price points, similarities, pros and cons among them, so on and so forth. But in this film, we're really going on to the next step regarding the media itself, or the actual cartridge. In other words, is a wire backed on the inside? Some filters have a wire back material. Does the Royal Purple? I don't know. We'll find out. What is the surface area? In other words, the length times the width. To do that, we'll cut open the filter and take a measurement. How many pleats are there? And that sort of thing. Just more information regarding, in this case, Royal Purple. Now, before we begin, I'll quickly do an overview on what you can expect with this with Royal Purple. And so let's just do that very quickly, and then I'll grab my hacksaw, we'll cut open the filter, and let's see what we come back with. Now, many of you are aware of the quality that Royal Purple provides. Number one, regarding the bypass material, they use a stamped piece of steel as opposed to plastic. Other filters such as the Wix XP and K&N uses a coil spring, but Royal Purple has decided to use a stamped piece of steel in their case. Regarding the media itself, very nicely evenly spaced filter, high quality. The end caps are metal. The inner tube or the center tube is metal as well, as opposed to plastic or cardboard. 99% efficiency rating. I believe they're good up to 15,000 miles. That's their recommended interval, which is a very, very good number. Captures to 25 microns. So very, very high quality without a doubt. Regarding the anti-drainback valve, they decided to go with silicone as opposed to rubber. And silicone does a much better job in higher or very hot temperatures and in very low temperatures. And then on the end cap here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inlet holes. The gasket, of course, is high quality. And whenever you change your motor oil, just make sure you put a dab of oil on the gasket material so it doesn't leak. So that's essentially what you can expect from Royal Purple. It's a very quick overview of what we did in the other film. Now, let's get a little bit more involved. Let me cut open this sucker. We'll take some measurements and we'll see how it compares to the other filters out there. So let's take a measurement here. We'll mark the length. The width happens to be 1 3/4 of an inch. Let's check out the length. And the length happens to be roughly 30 3/4 of an inch. So let's see what the calculation is. 1.75 times 30.75. Now, before we wrap up this film, a few other things I just want to note. If you're curious about the measurements here on the end caps, the inside diameter is roughly 1 1/8 of an inch. Outside is 2 1/4 of an inch. And I will explain why I have AmSoil out here in a moment. The material here is synthetic, and it is wire backed, as you saw earlier. 99% efficiency at 25 microns. So these are not inexpensive filters by any means, but the construction is top notch. This is what you're paying for compared to your lower costing oil filters. All metal construction, excellent efficiency ratings, very low microns. Now, lastly, what I've been explaining in the other films is that all these filters that we're going over are made for the same vehicle. They're all made for a 97 Nissan Maxima, so we have a baseline to work off of. So not only do we do these two filters, but also Wix XP, K&N, and Fram Pro Synthetic. And shortly, I will have a chart uploaded on Carsntoys.net. This is the last filter that I'm reviewing, so I will have that chart up very, very soon. And on that chart, you'll see a number of different filters based on price point, the construction, the measurements of the filter, so on and so forth. And I think it'll be a pretty cool idea, or a pretty cool chart, just to show what the other filters provide. If you love one filter, you can see the measurements based on this vehicle, so on and so forth. So again, that will be uploaded very, very shortly. The reason why we have AmSoil out here, when we uploaded the video on this filter, at the very end I was explaining, just looking at the components between AmSoil and Royal Purple, they seem to be exactly the same. The center tube and the end caps look to be exactly the same. Regarding the bottom of the plate, they look to be exactly the same. If you take a look at the anti-drainback valve, or excuse me, the bypass valve, it's exactly the same. They're the same bypass material. And also regarding the anti-drainback valve, same thing, just different color. So to me, they were identical. However, there is one slight difference since I've uploaded that video. Regarding Royal Purple, again, 99% efficiency at 25 microns. AmSoil is 99% at 20 microns. So the micron rating is a little bit better on AmSoil. In my case, the price difference was $2. The AmSoil was $2 more compared to Royal Purple. Now, just to give you an idea on how small that is, a human hair is roughly 70 microns. A red blood cell is around 50, 55 microns. So that gives you an idea on how small these particles are. So again, you're paying more money for these filters, but they do a really good job at what they're supposed to do. Now, before we wrap everything up here, I've had a couple of comments on what do all of these components do. You explain on what the more expensive filters provide regarding the construction compared to cheaper filters, but what do these components really do? So very quickly, regarding the anti-drainback valve, when you turn off your vehicle, instead of having all of the engine oil drain back into the filter, this allows some oil to be left in the motor. So the next time you start your vehicle, you have oil readily available. And that's the whole point behind this, to prevent dry starts. Now, the reason why you want silicone as opposed to rubber is because silicone is a better material regarding very low oil temperature and very high oil temperature. This just does a lot better job of breaking down compared to rubber. So that's the whole point behind that little guy. And then the bypass material, if for some reason, if the flow rate starts to degrade, and let's say it's just really clogged for whatever the reason, and now oil is having trouble filtering, or even flowing into the motor, this little gadget allows engine oil to enter the motor anyway. So in other words, it would bypass the filter and the engine oil would just go right back into the motor. And that's the whole point behind this. It's very, very important. It's essentially a safety feature, and having all metal construction is a big plus. Regarding the end caps, this just securely holds everything, and all metal interior tube prevents collapse. Again, some filters are plastic and cardboard. Very, very nice feature. And you always want a thick shell because it prevents punctures from going all the way through, road debris, that sort of thing. Also, if you're racing, for example, this holds the pressure quite well. So that's essentially what all of these components do. You do pay more money. This was $17 for my vehicle. This was $19. But again, in my opinion, your higher end oil filters, they're worth every penny, because if anything ever happens to your motor just because of a horrible oil filter, and now you need to do a rebuild, forget it. You would junk the car, or it would cost you thousands of dollars. So very, very important. So we will follow up with maybe one more oil filter film after this. We'll do a frame extra guard after probably 4,000 or 5,000 miles, and I'm curious to see what that looks like, because the end caps on the frame extra guard are cardboard. So it'll be quite interesting. And then we will get right back to the auto repair stuff, because I have a ton of things I really need to do. I'm kind of holding off on that until we wrap everything up here. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.